well, I pressed the record button and it is recording. See, it always does this. You press the record button and it shows like, oh, we've been recording for like the last like 4 seconds or something. Okay, whatever. Well, hello and welcome everybody to the 21st, I do believe it is the 21st episode of Hell in a Handbasket.
Hello. And
Bradley,
hopefully my power doesn't go out this time.
Yes. Hopefully we don't go through the same trials and tribulations that we went through last time.
We probably will, because this country is completely falling apart. You want to talk about 2 scoops of crazy? I'll post something at the end for you guys. Hopefully you'll get a good laugh out of it. I wish it wasn't true, but it is. Now this country, don't come here.
Well, we owe our loyal fan base, such as it exists, 4 scoops of crazy. So I did send you 4 scoops. I sent you 3 videos, but the first one I sent and like the last one I think were the better ones.
Okay.
But okay.
Yeah, I haven't even looked at anything yet, so it'll be all new to me.
Okay, all right. Well,
I literally shut down my computer from work like before you and I got on here. So
I see.
Yeah, it's been one of those weeks.
All right, dang, dude. Yeah, dude. It's been a ride for us both because we ended up not doing one last week. I was just so out of it. This is like the occupational hazards of blogging about politics and geopolitics. Is like I was saying before in like the last episode, sometimes it just starts to blend together. You know, you're reading so much stuff, you're watching so many interviews by Sergei Lavrov and by freaking Marco Rubio and stuff, and it just starts to all blend together. But of course, since we did not have an episode last week, there was a bunch of stuff that did take place, that did happen, and I happened to run into somebody that actually watches our videos and leaves comments and stuff and likes. I was like, oh, I was shocked that somebody does this. Of course, in the DPA community, and they suggested an excellent topic, and it's one that we definitely should have hit upon. We should be hitting upon, which is, of course, the what happened in Yemen. What the hell happened there? So, who are the Houthis? What happened in Yemen? So, the basic breakdown. For a basic breakdown, like I hunted down a article by Brian Berletic, who most people I'm sure that are familiar with DPA are probably also familiar with Brian Berletic. He has a YouTube channel, and he has and he does a lot of like writing for New Eastern Outlook. So he's based out of Thailand. He's an ex-U.S. Marine, and he's very, very, very critical of U.S. Foreign policy, of course, as are we all. So let's see here. Here we go. So I'm going to share his article because I thought it was pretty informative. I really liked how he actually broke down a lot of the stuff that I would have talked about anyway, and he did a better job than I would have. So Yemen, nation of approximately 40 million people, one of the poorest nations on earth, suffered decades of political instability, right? So basically what happened is in 2011, there was so Yemen was like, I guess he doesn't go into all this history here, but I don't remember who the leader of Yemen was. It was like a fragile coalition, like it was a fragile government in Yemen where they had like the strong man, and he had a deal with the Houthis, and the Houthis are he kind of gets you up to date on who the Houthis are. What the heck? Where's my mouse? Here it is. I'm pretty sure I could have sworn I read this article before, and it gave us a thing about Ansar Allah. But so basically, the Houthis are this movement that trying to so they're like kind of like both like a tribal group. Like Houthi is like the name of a dude, so they're both like a tribal group and kind of like a political movement. And when the strongman leader was kind of like the strongman leader broke a deal with the Houthis. I don't remember exactly what the deal was. This has been decades ago over a decade ago that this happened. They ended up getting into a huge fight, and he was supported by Saudi Arabia. So he like fled to Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia started this whole fight with the Houthis in Yemen, who are like were basically running the country now. And after a long time of fighting, the Houthis absolutely embarrassed them. And it wasn't just Saudi Arabia. Berlader writes here, it was the Saudi-led Persian Gulf coalition. So they were using F-15s, M1 Abrams tanks. They were getting ISR from from United States. These guys were it should have been a lopsided fight, but as we've already learned from the Middle East, what is the only force that can stand up to F-15s dropping tons of bombs? It's probably a guy in sandals, wearing sandals with an AK-47 with 20 rounds in the mag, and so these guys ended up burning Abrams tanks with Molotov cocktails. They ended up converting ancient Soviet missile technology and turning it into anti-shipping and just ballistic missiles that they would lob into Saudi Arabia. They launched a massive drone attack on Saudi oil infrastructure at some point in time. So the U.S. ends up entering the fight because this whole thing isn't going well. I should be reading more from his article. Let's see. World's worst humanitarian crisis, 14% of the population displaced by the conflict. This really doesn't give you full justice. Like Yemen has been a humanitarian disaster for a long time, like starving children, too tired to swat the flies off their eyes type of humanitarian disaster. Most recent military campaign. Go ahead.
Oh, but ultimately what it came down to, and correct me if I'm wrong. Oops, sorry, I got a telephone call. Can't. Okay. So ultimately what it comes down to, though, is it's a Sunni Shiite thing, right? Between the Houthis and the Saudis. And that's effectively what kind of led to that conflict between those two nations.
Well, they broke the fragile coalition. There was a fragile peace.
Right. Like basically the government of the day, the Yemen government, they were basically a Sunni government that were propped up. But then the Houthis kind of rebelled and it led to this civil war. And the government of Yemen, the Sunni government, they were backed by Saudi. Is that basically the gist of it?
So they were always memory. This strongman dude, I just can't remember his name. He was always backed by Saudi. He was always kind of like in the pocket of Saudi, and he also had it. Also, because like I think the Houthis were like either a majority or they were definitely armed, right? They're definitely, you can always see them carrying their daggers and carrying their AKs. They're always like, "Hey, we are armed. You will not disarm us." So it was like a big thing that they're a leader. The guy who is, whose last name was Houthi, who they go by, who they've taken his name as part of their dang, you're popular today if things blown up. So there was a fragile coalition, and when he went away, it may be a little bit like reminiscent of Yanukovych in Ukraine. When the dude that was keeping the fragile balance went away, things broke loose. And of course the Saudis were so like Yemen is located at really, so let me see here. Let me look up a picture of like Yemen here. Let's see. Like a map or some Wikipedia like so people can get a kind of a image. People can get a little bit of a picture of what I'm talking about. So here we go. So this is any day of the month, literally. What's going on? Here, okay, so Saudi Arabia right here, Oman, and then right here is Yemen. Obviously, as you can tell, so a huge portion of like oil passes through this tiny little like speck of water that obviously the Yemenis are right there. So what did they do? They started taking these ancient Soviet missiles, like ancient Soviet S-200 like anti-aircraft missiles, and they just like literally and use it as anti-shipping missiles, right? And so this fight's been going on for a while, but then it really escalated with Israeli genocide in Gaza. So the Houthis were stuck their necks out, and they're like, "No, we will attack ships going into Israel. And the United States decided to say, well, no, this is we're going to stick our neck out and we're going to join this fight because freedom of navigation and all this stuff, which was always a terrible idea. I remember at the time going like, don't fuck with the Houthis. They've been experiencing the worst humanitarian catastrophe for like years, for like 10 years now. They've been fighting a coalition of countries that are way better armed than them. They've been like, these are dudes in sandals, right? And they've been winning this war. Don't mess with them. Like, obviously, don't mess with them. What happened when we stuck our nose into Afghanistan? What was the Afghanistan? What was it the Taliban would say? They would say, they've got the watches, but we've got the time. Same attitude. Like, don't mess with the Houthis. Somebody that is that motivated, right? The only thing that can defeat our military air supremacy is going to be guys in sandals with AK-47s. So anyway, despite the tremendous power of the U.S. military and the protracted brutality the U.S. had applied to Yemen, Ansar Allah, that is the Houthis, remains a viable political and military organization, continues to target and destroy U.S. drones, conducting surveillance attacks in Yemeni airspace, targeting U.S. warships in the Red Sea amid a much wider blockade Ansar Allah has placed on Israel-bound vessels and now U.S. oil shipments. So they were taking these S-200 missiles that they, re-engineered. Maybe they had help with from the Iranians or something. And just shooting them at ships, and it doesn't have to even hit the ship. It just has to get close enough before insurance companies aren't going to be willing to insure your ship. So the way that we wanted to ensure this freedom of navigation was go and put our aircraft carriers in there and kind of like cow them. And what happened? Well, recently the news was that Donald Trump said the Yemenis said they don't want to fight anymore. They capitulated, but more importantly, they just said that they didn't want to fight, right? So when what did the Yemeni say? The Yemeni said, "Oh, well, the U.S. they're the ones that picked this fight. As soon as they said that they're leaving, of course we're not going to be shooting at them. We're only shooting at ships going to Israel at Israeli, This is about the Gaza blockade for us still." So what did the Yemenis do? We ended up suffering extremely embarrassing losses. We ended up losing, I don't know how many of those like 20, 30 million Reaper drones that we have. We ended up losing a shit ton of those to Houthi fire. We ended up losing, three aircraft? Friendly fire. One fell off So at least three aircraft. We ended up losing.
Two fell off, and one got hit by friendly fire. There's so many lies coming out of the U.S. Navy with this whole misoperation because the Eisenhower got hit back in whenever it was December, and that got taken out of commission. And then the Truman showed up. That got hit. That had to go back for repairs. Then they brought this other aircraft carrier in. They are getting hit. Now, it's really hard to take down an aircraft carrier, obviously. But, all of these very expensive multi-million-dollar airplanes just, falling off the side of a ship, that doesn't seem likely to me. Well, I think what's more likely is they got hit.
See, so we'll never know. We'll never know, and that's the thing. But see, what I think is there's, I'm not even gonna opine one way or the other. I'll just say, guess what? That's still combat losses. That's still losses that we suffered at the hands of the Houthis. If you want to say, oh man, these clever Houthis, they're shooting rockets and causing us to lose aircraft. Okay, whatever your excuses. Maybe it's less embarrassing that what klutzes are we? Maybe that's less embarrassing to admit than the Yemenis shot down an F-18 with an ancient rocket or something. I don't know. So, but either way, we picked this fight with Yemen stupidly, foolishly, and now we're walking away with their tail between our legs. And Donald Trump is probably the only guy that can pull it off the way that he did, making it seem like, you know, what did he say? They don't want to fight. More importantly, you know, I feel like even the Houthis will just leave him alone. They're like, whatever, however he spins it. So, while Ansar Allah has regularly claimed to have targeted and forced U.S. warships to flee, a recent CNN article appears to confirm that indeed drones and anti-shipping missiles targeting U.S. ships have not only forced them to take evasive measures, they have also caused material losses, including a $60 million F-18 warplane. And I don't remember, like, $60 million F-18 warplane, multiples of those, and also however many Reaper MQ-9 drones. Oh, here it tells you up to 7 MQ-9 Reaper drones over the previous 2 months. So that is massive. Go ahead.
By the way, I was actually reading, I think it was in Al Jazeera earlier today, that the Truman is leaving the Red Sea as we speak, and there's no plans to replace it. So there you go. You know, they're pulling out.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so so Brian Berletic, ex-Marine, let's hear what he has to say. The drones are used to identify and guide munitions to targets, have a service ceiling comparable to modern manned warplanes like the F-35. Regular loss of MQ-9 drones over Yemen implies that Ansar Allah possesses air defense systems capable of reaching altitudes manned U.S. warplanes operate at. So this is why the U.S. has failed so far to establish air superiority over Yemeni airspace. So like we're saying, like, what happened? We don't really know. Is there a chance that they literally shot an F-18 out of the sky? I mean, there's a chance, but that's, to me, I'm like, that's less important. What's more important is the end result. Let's take a look at the end result. What's happening? What's happening is we're the ones that are backing down.
Sure. Now, here's a question for you, though. So the whole idea of this Houthi, you know, blockade, let's call it, or whatever, this missile attack game in the Red Sea, the reason that they established that was, you know, for Israeli ships, right?
Yeah.
And then that was also, then they added in American ships and British ships, I think, or something like that.
Well, we decided to go pick a fight with them. We said that we're going to ensure freedom of navigation, and they're like, "Well,
right." So I guess my question is, the Americans and the Houthis have come to some sort of arrangement that they won't attack each other.
Mm-hmm.
But does that still mean that the Houthis will be attacking Israeli ships?
Oh, the Houthis said they are. The Houthis are like,
okay,
no, this is a deal between us and America. You guys were the ones that picked the fight. You guys don't want to fight anymore? Oh, well, why didn't you say so before? We're still going to be hitting.
So now that the U.S. is pulling out, just watch that first ship that gets hit. What happens then? Right? Like, what happens then?
I don't think that, see, with the U.S. pulling out, I think that they have to have some kind of, it'll have to be some, like, there's no way that Israel is just going to accept that kind of a blockade, even though if we can't do anything about it, maybe this is even just some kind of extra pressure on Israel. Go ahead.
I'm not sure that they have much of a choice, though. Like, I was also reading today, it looks to me like the U.S. is just pulling out of the Red Sea. And it's all very strange. Like, Trump is doing all these moves, and maybe we should spend some time talking about the Trump moves that he's made the last few days, that he's been in the Middle East. But it looks like, you know, Trump is sort of souring on all of this Project Israel and is kind of pulling away from it. But I don't know how he'd be able to do that with the Israeli lobby being as strong as it is. But like I said, if the Truman is pulling out, which was reported by Al Jazeera, and also I read today that the Israelis were hitting targets in Yemen. So it looks like to me, like, yes, the U.S. is no longer targeting them, and they've effectively shifted that responsibility over to the Israelis. However, I'm not sure that the Israelis have enough firepower to fight that. You know what I mean? So something's going to give, I would think.
They don't, and they can't. If we can't do it, the Israelis can't do it either. It's just, I think Donald Trump is looking at this like it's a stupid, probably not just him, other people are telling him, this is, pull out while it still looks like you can still get out while you're ahead. Okay, what are we going to do? Get into a quagmire in Yemen too? We just got out of Afghanistan. We just got finished. Not even we'll never finish scraping all that egg off our face. It will always be reminded. You know, it'll be a Vietnam in the future. We're always going to talk about it like this is the stupid thing that we did that caused the downfall of our financial empire. That we didn't have to do. This was a self-owned. We stepped on the same rake again with gusto. You know, like we did that. So they're gonna be looking. So yeah, they're looking at this thing and they're like, no, not again. It's like sitting at DPA open mic going, this is a black hole. So I think that maybe even more than Donald Trump, like Donald Trump's the point man to be able to take the blame and actually do it and spin the PR on it. Like he can do that. Go ahead.
Like the more that I think about it, and I haven't given it much thought, by the way, like when I say that, the more I like literally within the last couple minutes since we've been talking about it, but I think about, Trump over in the Middle East, and he signs this, like he's announcing these deals and these partnerships with Saudi Arabia, for example, with the UAE, with Qatar as well, about turning, Qatar into an AI superpower and having a security deal with the Saudis.
It's been their dream.
Well, then I think about it. And I think about some of the things that Trump said while he was on that trip. And I think Trump's vision, and I don't think he's wrong on this, like it's a just as good a plan as any, but he mentioned a couple times on his trip about turning the Middle East into like an economic powerhouse, right? And the idea would be that, by making the region somewhat wealthier for everybody, and they would all sort of cooperate and get along. I think this is what's in Trump's head. And now that I think about it, I think that maybe one of the things that we eventually might see, the plan for Gaza would be to have the Saudis, for example, act as some sort of protectorate for that and finance the rebuild and stuff like that. Because we know that, nobody's going to let the U.S. come in and take it over. Nobody's going to let the Israelis come in and take it over or anything like that. But maybe the idea now is some of these Middle East countries, partner countries of the U.S., if they could come in and act as some sort of guarantors, then I think that would be palatable for the Americans. Wouldn't be palatable for the Israelis, but I think it would be palatable for the Americans. And I think that that's where Trump is moving towards. However, I'm not sure that Trump really realizes the power of the Israeli lobby in the U.S. So it'll be an interesting couple months if this plays out the way I'm kind of seeing it in my head now.
I don't know. I look at it more of like a dog and pony show. Sure, Donald Trump really doesn't like Netanyahu. He's sick and tired of him. He's not the only one. Other people are sick and tired of Netanyahu. But it's almost like he's more pro-Israel than Netanyahu. That's kind of how I almost say. Like, so when he says, "Oh yeah, this is a prime real estate and stuff," like maybe part of him would be curious about, hey, what can we do to try to get me to have some of that prime real estate, and maybe if I'm the guy that brings this fish home, like I brought Gaza in, like I can also, the Trump empire can also somehow benefit from that. But more than that, I think he's not even thinking on it that many levels in. It's just like he's definitely on the side of Israel. He wouldn't be here without the Israel lobby. People like Sheldon Adelson and his wife Miriam Adelson are, by and large, hugely responsible for the success of his political career, especially his presidency.
Sure.
And he's always been like, what is it? Jared Kushner is, I think he's Jewish. I don't remember.
Oh,
but
yeah,
anyway.
Sure. Yep.
So like, there's a lot of I think Donald Trump is unapologetically on the side of Israel in the Israel-Palestine thing. He probably wants to look like he could be a little bit more even-handed than he can, but I think it's more just playing tough negotiation politics with the Israelis. Like, what did he say recently? Something about, what did he say that drove everybody mad? Oh crap! About the Gaza thing. Recently he basically stirred up another hornet's nest about issues in Gaza, right? And I think that this is just playing hardball with Netanyahu, helping maybe internal players maneuver and get him out of the way or something like this. Because Netanyahu has accrued a lot of power. And while this whole war is going on, it's really hard to do anything about him in his current position. So yeah, I mean, they're just gonna play this hard ball. I think that's all that it is. But in the end, the goal still is to, do the same thing to Golan Heights, the Gaza Strip. That's the goal in the end. To still do that, I think. And with this whole Saudi Arabia thing, it's just a matter of, we can't get tied up in this. They were using massive amounts of precision munitions because the Houthis were able to hit these drones and hit these airplanes, right? Brian Berletic talks about it. Western media outlets have noted U.S. use of electronic warfare against targets across Yemen armed with anti-radiation guided missiles designed to detect and home in on radar signals. Missiles are used as part of SEAD, suppression of enemy air defenses. Despite the simple premise, the detection and suppression of enemy air defenses is dangerous and complex. Ansar Allah is still regularly detecting and downing MQ-9 drones. This means that U.S. SEAD missions have fallen short of destroying Ansar Allah's air defenses. Limitations of U.S. military power have steadily been exposed. So they're using these anti-radiation missiles, these high-end rockets, to try to establish this air superiority, air supremacy, and they're not successful. And they have to launch extremely expensive boutique munitions that we don't have to spend on freaking sandal-wearing, dagger-wielding sand people that we don't understand their culture. We really don't care about. Like, we're just here because we're supporting the other, sand people that are on our side. It's like, you explain this to Americans. Excuse me. Yeah. You explain this to Americans. That's how they're going to think about it. Okay, you could explain that Yemen is a very importantly located country because that's going to be I don't remember what it is, like a third of global oil supply goes through there, and also they're able to launch rockets at ships going to Israel. Okay, you can get some people to understand that, but more than anything else, people don't really care about that. It's like what's his name? Was it Herman Cain that said Uzbeki Brekistan? Like, Americans don't know about this stuff. So I think that this is the right move, where Donald Trump is just like, we win. They don't want to fight. They don't want to fight.
I actually think Cain was one of the smarter ones. Like, that's the sad part.
But this is no. That's probably not even. He was like a self-made, right? Wasn't he the dude that Godfather Pizza or something? But anyway, yes. This is really important, I think. This is really what it comes down to. This is the key takeaway. The limitations of U.S. military power steadily exposed. Recent conflicts. Operations against Yemen have required U.S. warplanes to conduct standoff strikes because of the inability to either destroy or evade Russian and Iranian-designed air defense systems. Transfer of U.S. weapons to Ukraine and their failure on the battlefield there has further exposed the U.S. limits of military might. I don't know. I'd say that some of this is overblown, maybe to some extent, because the fight that the Russians were very smart with the fight in Ukraine. They ended up forcing us to fight their fight. But here, the Yemenis are kind of having our fight, And so remember all that crap. I heard Willie OAM talking about this, and it's just a good point where he's like, I gave the Russians a lot of shit for not being able to achieve air superiority over Ukraine. But the U.S. wasn't able to achieve air superiority over Yemen, over the Houthis. The Houthis don't have an air force, right? It was a much more desperate situation. And so, like, overall, this is not even just a commentary on U.S. kind of military power. It's just a commentary on how the game has changed, how much the game has changed, and how the playing field has been leveled. And if that F-35 was so badass, and that F-35 could have stealthily come in there and bombed all this stuff, and we didn't have to use these massive standoff strikes in order to be able to do all this stuff, yeah, we would have. But that's not the reality. The reality is even the Houthis, they're starving. They're basically experiencing the world's worst humanitarian catastrophe. Maybe Gaza is, of course, worse now, but up until Gaza, it was Yemen. So and these guys, and they for a decade they beat the Saudis. Imagine how the wealth that the Saudis have, the weaponry that the Saudis have. They beat the Saudis. They beat the freaking the coalition against them, and then we stuck our nose into the fight foolishly, and they beat that back too. And so Donald Trump pulling out sooner rather than later, it doesn't matter if it's a fight, if it's a loss, right? Imagine if we had the foresight to do this before with the terror wars of the last decades. When Bush did his whole mission accomplished thing. If it was just like, yeah, mission accomplished and we're gone, that's it. We'll just call it a win. We have the best PR in the world. Our propaganda is second to none. The vast majority of people would have totally believed it, would have totally fallen for it, would have kind of totally went along. Even this thing proves it, because here Donald Trump is just backing out. The mission is not accomplished. We did not accomplish our mission. The Houthis are like, we're still shooting Israeli ships. Like, you just came to us. You came to us and asked us, and we said, well, you started it. Just back off. So yeah, you guys back off. We're not going to shoot at you, or whatever, And Donald Trump is the guy that can say it in his Trumpian way and get it done, and that's smart. Cut your losses. Cut your losses. Don't fuck with the Houthis. The weakness, the weak part, like rock, paper, scissors. If the American freaking hold up, just want to finish this point. If the American, like machine is like either a hard rock or like surgical precision scissors, that we think we're going to cut, the paper with or whatever it is, the Houthis have the answer. They have the foil or whatever. If we're the scissors, they are the rock, right? So like the only thing that can defeat, Yugoslavia fell, a massive bombing campaign. It turns out that even shooting down F-117 Nighthawks, that's not going to save you. But you know what will defeat the American war machine? It's going to be the Taliban. So go ahead. Sorry.
Well, just to put a bow on this topic, and we can move on to something else. But I think ultimately what this whole misadventure comes down to, it's only showing that the American military is just spread too damn thin right now, and that's not Trump's fault, right? He just showed up, but
it's just to his credit that he acknowledges it. That's what it is.
I mean, but what we're seeing in place as well, NATO in Ukraine, they're spread thin. They don't have anything left. The Houthis in Yemen, any sort of real threats, they can't respond to. And nobody's going to really take them seriously, because why would they, right? They're getting whipped by the Houthis, for God's sakes. So, I think what Trump's doing is a good thing for the world, for world peace. But it also highlights that, I think the American military and the administration really needs to have a rethink on what the strategic priority is. And maybe that's what they're doing. Like maybe they've said, hey, China's now the focus. We got to focus on China. That's what we've heard Rubio say. And maybe that's the plan. They're pulling everything out, which, hey, if that's the focus, that's what they should be focused on. But you can't have multiple priorities, right? It never works out well. So I think that's what we're seeing here, and it'll be interesting to see how Israel responds to all this in the coming
Well,
months. Like I said,
they've already been extremely displeased, which is why I think
right?
the real reason why Donald Trump is saying all this crazy stuff about Israel, because he's just playing hardball. And I don't even think it's with Israel necessarily. I think it's with the Netanyahu, whatever, the Netanyahu, I don't want to call it a junta regime, just to use the term. But anyway, so I'd say the next thing what we should hit upon should be Operation Sindor. Sorry, guys, we were away, and there's so much news that happened. So Operation Sindor, holy fuck! Well, while Hell in a Handbasket was AWOL, freaking India and Pakistan went to war. How do you like them toaster ovens? So basically, there was this attack that happened. Pahalgam attack. I don't know, dude. I can't pronounce. But anyway, so 26 civilians were killed in Jammu and Kashmir. So India and Pakistan, I'm sure people know, there's a territory, Kashmir, where there's territorial disputes there. I think most of the people there are Muslim, but due to the way that the countries broke up after World War II and like British imperialism that was there, part of it, like the Kashmir, ended up being on the side of India. So anyway, so civilians were killed there, terrorist attacks, I guess, and so India, in order to respond to this to these terror attacks, to these murder of civilians in these areas, in these regions, launched Operation Sindor. Right. So what was that? They took I don't know, like 5 aircraft, something like they took some airplanes and they decided to go bomb what they said are terror camps, and I have no doubt that they probably are. Terror camps in retaliation to this. And it looks like the whole thing was a trap because they let out their payload, and still in Indian airspace, Pakistani jets, came out from mountains and used new Chinese weaponry to actually take out these aircraft, to take out the Indian aircraft. So then there were reports of like 125 aircraft or something, huge dogfight in the media, which doesn't make any sense. It's not what a dogfight is. You can't have a 125 airplane dogfight. But I think the media was trying to basically convey that this is a big deal. Like, this hasn't happened in a long time. And it's interesting to see how these old school aircraft, like in Yemen, in the Ukraine war, during Operation Sindor, we're starting to see their limitations. The airplane is expensive. The pilot is expensive. Training is expensive, right? All this stuff. Drones and rockets make more sense. Because what did they do after this whole shebang? They launched rockets at each other. So
well, you look at Ukraine, like you said, as a perfect example. Basically, all they use airplanes now for anyway is to launch a few missiles and then go home, right?
from a distance.
Yeah, there's no dogfights anymore. They're effectively artillery, right? So I think the age of the airplane and the age of the ship are long over. Like you said, it's drones, it's rockets, it's stuff like that now, right? Submarines will still be useful for sure, but who's going to be investing in aircraft carriers these days? I don't think so. And even jets, yeah, sure, you need an air force, but are you going to be doing a lot of Tom Cruise style dogfights in one? I don't think so. I could be wrong. Like, I'm not a military guy, but it doesn't seem to me that those sorts of things really happen anymore, because like you said, everything's done from a distance now, and the rockets are so fast that you can launch something from 1,000 miles away and it'll get there pretty quick. So I'm not sure. I don't know how useful they'll be in the future.
hold up. So yeah, so like yeah, um, just the fact that it's not how it used to be, where airplanes were significantly less expensive, and that these are like multi-million dollar, hundreds of millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars machines, and the fact that the human pilot can become a limiting factor a lot of the time nowadays. The technology has gotten that far. It's really is kind of interesting to see that everywhere that we've seen this happen. Where did the Americans end up doing? Launching standoff weapons, high precision stuff, the really expensive stuff that we decided it's not worth doing. What did the Indians and Pacs do? Same thing. What did the Russians end up doing? The funny thing is that, you know, one of the game-changing weapons in the Ukraine war was the fabs. They took ancient drop bombs that they had, you know, a huge stockpile of, put on some wings on it, and added satellite navigation to it, and that was more of a game changer, right? Because what matters more is to be able to have that standoff capability, and to have it on the cheap. On the cheap matters so much. The reason why we couldn't, why Yemen was unsustainable. I can't remember the name for what happened there. Like, there's a name for it, but anyway, the reason why we were not able to sustain our fight against the Houthis is because it's too expensive to launch these anti-radiation missiles and still not be able to get everything. So basically, after the kind of embarrassment of these jets being shot down, so there was something like at least 3 jets that were shot down, and one of them was like India's best top of the line jet, which is like the French made Rafale with it's like it's like a super modern version. So it looks like the 3 jets that were definitely shot down was like a Mirage, a Rafale, and a Su-30. And so what probably happened is these were the aircraft that were launching these airstrikes, and the Pakistanis used, like I said, new weaponry. So this is probably part of the reason the Indians weren't expecting it, but also I guess they had an AWACS, in a Chinese-made AWACS, or in the sky. So that's an early air warning and control system airplane. It's just like a big radar in the sky, let's say. So there were a couple of things that the Indians didn't expect, and so it just looks like it was probably a trap. Basically, there were like these heightened tensions. After these rocket attacks, a bunch of airports had to be shut down. The Indians hit Pakistani airports, and apparently the Indian air defense systems worked very well. The Indians were extremely pleased, much more pleased with the results of their aircraft, of their anti-air systems, than they were with the aircraft. So they praised the S-400 endlessly. They compared their air defense shield to Israel's air defense shield, and said, like, this just basically completely clowns Israel's systems, like, because India has so much more area to defend, and where they were so much more successful against Pakistan. So yeah, after like there were these like high tensions for a while, then it seems like they've both kind of like calmed down a bit, except for the rhetoric. But things seem to have been more or less, chilled out for a bit. So anyway, we're still seeing what's going to happen, but it looks like they've gone back to their default positions. Like, I'm not talking to you. Passive aggressiveness. We'll see.
So, question: this whole thing, do you think it was a CIA op? I think it was a CIA op.
Why?
Well, it seems to me wherever JD Vance goes, bad things happen. So he was over in India, and then a couple days later, they get attacked. Pakistan has always been in the CIA's pocket, so wouldn't surprise me if it was, a little bit of tension creating. Always got to keep the fires stoked, because, we can't have too much peace in the world. So that'd be my guess.
Yeah, I don't know. It definitely seems like it was the Pakistanis that provoked this. Like, it definitely seems like they did the thing. They did the shiesty thing. They pushed the dude, right? And then on top of that, they also set the trap. They waited for the Indians to respond in a predictable manner that they would have. The Indians like followed, I guess, apparently predictable flight paths. They flew super high, like they weren't expecting any kind of, they weren't expecting this at all. So yeah, I mean, it looks like the Pakistanis were, and like the one thing that really the saving grace for the Indians has been like, but in the retaliation thing, the the Pakistanis definitely failed, and like I think they ordered more S-400 systems from the Russians as well. So that shows that if they're putting their money where their mouth is, like they're putting their money on not more airplanes, they're putting their money on anti-aircraft systems. It's a smarter investment. It's a smarter bet, if you can't even take out the anti-aircraft systems of the Houthis. I mean, and this really just paints Iron Dome and all of Israel's systems in this horrible light. Like, really, you guys' systems really must suck. If it's that bad, you have that tiny little area to protect, and it's that much of a disaster. And you know what it reminds me of? When the Houthis launched attacks against the Saudis, and the Saudi Patriot systems were trying to repel these attacks. I think this was maybe people like it, this was before you saw a lot of this stuff happening in Ukraine and a lot of this stuff happening in Israel. So like this was, the world hadn't seen Western anti-aircraft missile systems in action for a really, really long time, since like, I don't know, Gulf War or something. I don't know. So, and what we saw was a shocking failure. Like, these missiles would do things like shoot out from the launcher and then turn around and like hit the radar or something, like hits other stuff right on the ground. And so there's an MIT professor named Ted Postal who really goes through and explains how ineffectual Israel's air defense system has been. And his conclusion...
That guy is absolutely terrifying, by the way. Like, this guy is really... Yeah, I've heard him speak. And like, when you listen to him talk about nuclear war and the like what would happen in a nuclear war, you're just like, damn, okay, that's why we don't need nuclear war. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
No, Ted Postal is definitely, he's a heavyweight. I think he hasn't been doing a lot of interviews recently, and I think that my conspiracy theory is that this is because he's probably engaged in advising the current administration. I know that he has a lot of respect for Tulsi Gabbard. Maybe he's advising Tulsi Gabbard or something like this. So basically, Ted Postal says that the failure rate during like the Gulf War was like 100%. Like, we shot down 0 Scud missiles.
Scott Ritter said the same thing, and he worked on them in the Gulf during the Gulf War, and he said the exact same thing. He said they never hit one of them. So
yeah, dude, it's terrifying to think of. Jesus Christ. So the effectiveness, see, and so people like in my mind, this set a kind of I don't know, not an expectation, but like a narrative was set up where it's like, okay, because Ted Postal does say stuff like this too, where these anti-air systems, they work really well against airplanes, to the point where if you're in an airplane and a Patriot missile has locked onto you, eject, you're not going to be able to do anything about it. But they are significantly less effective versus ballistic missiles. However, it seems like the Indians think the Russian systems are much more effective than ours, and everybody's been suspecting this since forever. And I think this is really the best evidence that we have. The fact that the Patriot is a joke by comparison. It must be. That's how I see it. From like to my eye, I always look out for actions speak louder than words, and your budget speaks louder than your public statements. So Erdogan can go out there and say all kinds of crazy stuff, but when he puts his money where his mouth is and he ends up buying the S-400 system, okay, in that situation, it was probably Western-backed generals that were trying to overthrow him. So maybe that was like a statement. But this here is proof is in the pudding. This is the Indians went through this thing. They went through some public embarrassment. They lost important aircraft. They lost they lost some face. But the fact that they were able to repel that attack from the Pakistanis, excuse me, I don't want to be rude.
Well,
so
it comes
let's
down
see.
to the hardware, like you said. Like at the end of the day, I mean, Patriot missile system, dude. I remember when they came out with that it was back in the 80s when I was a kid. They were talking about Patriot missile systems. I remember when they were designing them, and I'm talking like the early 80s, right? When they were still in development. These are old systems. Same thing with the M1 Abrams, right? I remember vividly the Abrams was like the big thing back in the first Gulf War. The first Gulf War was back in 1990, man. That was 35 years ago.
Yeah.
And like, so all this stuff is kind of like really dated. You know what I mean? So,
Well,
okay.
okay. It's more than that, though, because if we knew that there were problems with our equipment all along, right? We always talk about Russian military corruption, Dude, that is insane. That is corruption right there. What are you doing? We just went through this harrowing experience where our missile system was a 100% failure. This is worse than an F. You guys got a 0 and you didn't fix the problem? You're telling me we had decades? We had it wasn't until 2014 that we decided to coup the government in Ukraine. We had all this time to address this problem. All this time. What the hell were we doing? Where was our what were we doing? Seriously. In this time, what did the Russians do? In 2006, they released the S-400, which was built on the S-300, which I don't know, 1980s. I don't remember when the S-300 came out. So they've been iterating on these things, right? It's been in continuous development, what they call continuous development, where you're constantly working on the system. You constantly have kind of some kind of new ideas, and we can see how that's paid off. Because what does Vaughn always say? We have, 1,000 freaking tank holes rusting right now. Nobody's doing anything about it, just in the desert, just sitting there. Versus continuous development. Okay, you know what? We're going to be having a T-72B3 now. We're going to put this extra armor on it. Now it's going to have this kind of a gun instead of that kind of gun. We're going to put an iPad in front of the driver, and we're going to call that a GPS computer or something, right? Now they've been working on this stuff, and it's paying off results. So we've been spending, what are we spending? $1 trillion? What is our actual military budget? This is how much we are spending more than the next 10 countries combined. That is insane corruption. That is the kind of corruption that makes Saddam Hussein look like patty cakes. This is the ultimate corruption. The F-35 was the most expensive weapon system ever developed by mankind. Where is this F-35 wonder weapon taking out these Houthis, these guys in sandals with AK-47 came out in 1947.
I'll tell you exactly where it is. It's sitting in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. in everybody's mansions. Because we talked about this before, I'm sure, but they figured out the game a long time ago, right? The military-industrial complex, they used to build stuff, right? And I got a pretty good background in building stuff, okay? as
It used to be an
nature-wise.
industrial complex too. Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, you paid the MIC lots of money, but you also got lots of product. After the fall of the Soviet Union, the need for product was no longer there, but the need for money still was. So they figured out pretty quickly that it's more profitable to get into the services side of things than it is the hardware side of things. You make a whole lot more money maintaining and consulting than you do actually producing. Because if you build a tank, you actually had to pay for the components of that tank. If you're consulting on some bullshit go nowhere project, which is just a money sink into a black hole, you can consult forever, man. And I've seen it in my career with construction campus, all this other stuff. Like, this is where they make their money. And
Dude,
they figured that out a long time ago. And that's why there's no inventory. That's why NATO has no weapons. That's why, you've got these old Patriot systems as being quote unquote the best and the brightest and all this stuff. They got out of that game a long time ago because that's not a profitable game to be in.
That's
right?
so crazy that you say that, dude. It's like you're saying this, and you know what? This epiphany hit me. This is what happened to the peace dividend. The peace dividend existed. There was a peace dividend. They did disarm. They did deindustrialize the military-industrial complex and ship and fuck off the supply chains and the research and development. It happened.
They did all that. They did it all. They just didn't give us the money back. They did everything that they needed to do except give the money back. That was the problem. Right?
Oh my gosh, dude.
We didn't tell them, no, the peace dividend is ours, not yours. So that's on us. We weren't clear. We just weren't clear.
We were expecting a peace dividend, and they were like, so long, suckers. This is your peace dividend. We are going to be freaking living in gated mansions. We never have to freaking, you guys are going to be living under bridges, which we don't even freaking maintain anymore. There's a homeless veteran crisis in America, a homeless veteran crisis. That kid that came out of high school that you sent him to the freaking front lines, that he's now completely screwed up. Are you telling me that that is the person that gets to live under a bridge? And meanwhile, you fucked away our peace dividend. That was our peace dividend. You know who funded that military-industrial complex? It wasn't your retarded kids. It was freaking Joe Schmo from MIT. You idiots. Look what you did. So you know what? Yeah, dude, it serves them right. You could sometimes you just like it hits. It's like, dude, it serves you right. Yeah, China deserves to eat. It's not our lunch. It's your lunch. You guys stole our lunch. Here you guys have this massive lunch. You're like, oh, China's going to steal our lunch. No, you dumbasses. Oh, yeah, dude. Sorry. I just got so mad. You just, the way that you put that just clicked with me. I'm like, God damn.
Well, so I mean, that's where we're at, right? So, I don't know what else to say. Like, that is absolutely where we're at. And once you've designed this type of system, it makes it very difficult to unravel, right? Yeah. Because there's so many hands in the kitty, and there's so many people who are at that trough to, like I said, to unwind that and get back to like an actual useful military like industry. Oh, very difficult to do. Very difficult to do. You'd have to nationalize the whole friggin' thing at this point.
That's exactly what you would have to do. And I think that's kind of what they sort of kind of want to do. Like, I think we're taking a look, a sideways long glance at what China's doing, at what Russia's done. And we're like, okay, General Fuckface, who works for Raytheon and has a retirement plan all set up where he's going to be making, $400,000 a year, going to a think tank and repeating the same World War II talking points he read from frickin' Anthony Beaver.
Yeah.
That guy, that is the opposite of a patriot, right? This person is self-interested. He is the people like that are the infection, are the leeches eating the empire from the inside. like you guys are personally financially benefiting off of the worst advice ever, off of more war, you know, how, and it's led from one disaster to another. That's all it's done, you know, and it's out in the open and everybody's freaking talking about it. Donald Trump going out there and at least, it's probably not even Donald Trump, right? Maybe Donald Trump too, I don't know. Going out there and saying like, this is only going to get worse. What happened in Ukraine? It's only gotten worse, you know. What's happened? Like, this is definitely, I can see where this is going. We've been here before. I've seen this movie, so let's back out. It's the only way to do it, and it is because, well, what was the Colonel Alexander Vindman, I think was the dude that's like, the return of industrial warfare. The return of industrial warfare, excuse me. We just imagined that warfare was different. We just like, warfare would have always have to have been industrial in the end. If you're going to fight anybody that comes to a grinding halt, you know, like the North versus the South in the American Civil War, no matter what, it comes down to industry in that kind of a fight. And so, like I was saying before, in the Russia strategy for the Russian strategy for the Ukraine war was basically force them to fight our fight. And when we were forced to meet the Russians on their battlefield of choice, on the way that they wanted to fight, guess what? It turns out that we fucked away our military industrial complex. And yeah, dude, like the big takeaway for me today is like, the peace dividend, dude. All of that. Okay, if they hadn't fucked off and hadn't had all those freaking mansions in DC, maybe we could still have had tanks. I mean, maybe it's a good thing that we don't, because now we have to like be like, oh, we actually have to engage in our diplomacy because we don't have 5,000 extra tank holes that we can just refurbish right quick and just send them off to somewhere. So maybe that's not the worst thing in the world, because we've proven to not be responsible with during the unipolar moment, during the American hegemony moment. We proved that we were not maybe we didn't always live up to our ideals. How about like that? Let's put it that way. But it serves them right. This is what they get, dude. This is what they get. They gutted the middle class, sent our manufacturing stuff out to China, right? They financialized the economy. They deindustrialized. We've gone from an industrial kind of capitalism to this financial capitalism, and you know, like, was it 2 years ago now? Jake Sullivan came out there and he's like, "Hey guys, guess what? It turns out that our supply chains, yeah, it's a dire situation." Yeah. So yeah, it serves them right. This is what you guys get. And you know what? You could have asked Joe Schmo on the street, "Hey, you think this is a good idea? Like maybe if we send off all of our manufacturing to China? By the way, the Chinese are going to want to be partners that have access to the intellectual properties of these things that we're going to be manufacturing there. We're not going to be manufacturing them here anymore, by the way, which means the supply chains for all this stuff they're going to dry up as well." Right? If you ask that of the average American, they'd be like, "What are you talking about?" It's a good thing that we have smart people in high places that know them better than to go down this retarded path, this path of retardation, right? But no, apparently not. Apparently our so-called elites were the bottom rung. It's like meritocracy. The term meritocracy was originally conceived as like an ironic, like a insulting term. Like, oh, let me guess, you're wealthy because of your merit. Okay, it's a meritocracy, haha, right? People really like the meritocratic like the elites, right? They really like that term, and so now meritocracy is like used in the non-ironically, but originally that's how it was used, because obviously that's ridiculous to assume that Bill Gates is a billionaire because he literally works that much harder than you. That's not how that works, right? There's other things at play. So
we'll get into it when we talk about the two scoops, but it really is incredible how quickly we've all declined as a society. Anyway, what else do you want to talk about? Ukraine?
Okay, so we should probably touch a little bit upon the negotiations that are going on, and so this is a story that is like developing in kind of almost like real time. So let me see. Let me pull up. I was figuring what we should do is take a look at what Russian and Ukrainian propaganda are saying about it. So let's see. Here we go. Present. I'm going to go to RT first because I always forget to check RT, and it's every time I do, I'm just like, this really, it's like it just makes following Russian propaganda easier, dude. Like, it's just, everybody should, because you could be reading TASS and stuff, but they really give you the easy to understand version in RT. Okay, Ukrainian negotiator made fantasy claim that Russia plans to attack NATO state. So just a story from the talks. A member of the Ukrainian delegation claimed during peace talks on Friday that Moscow is planning to attack Poland in 2030. A source present at Istanbul negotiations told RT. The Russian side reportedly burst into laughter as the Ukrainian delegates' claims with Medinsky saying, "Let's not turn these negotiations into a fantasy novel." Episode unfolded Friday during the first direct talks between Moscow and Kiev in 3 years. The negotiations, originally scheduled in Turkey for Thursday, were postponed after Ukraine's Vladimir Zelensky failed to appoint a delegation until late that evening. Yeah, so the Ukrainians were basically dragging their feet during this whole entire thing. The Russians were accusing them of trying to humiliate them, but I guess like the Ukrainians were a little bit upset about the level of the team that was sent to the rank of
let's just call this all what it is. It's all theater, right? So
I think that it's. Go ahead.
Well, basically, how this all came about was, they were talking about negotiations, and Putin came out and said, "Yeah, let's go ahead and meet." Like, he was open to it, and then the Europeans, obviously not wanting to meet because they don't want to end this, they threw this red herring out where they said, well, Putin must show up in Istanbul.
Yeah.
And Zelensky was like, I'm going to Istanbul and I expect Putin to be there. And he
arrived at Ankara. He arrived at Ankara.
Duel or something. Like, I didn't like.
No, dude. So I'll tell you what it was. So that wasn't a duel. What it was is that Zelensky tried to do let's do this whole 30-day ceasefire thing. It was like a trap for Donald Trump, because Donald Trump is like, well, yeah, let's do this ceasefire thing, and then Vladimir Putin basically one-ups him. He out diplomatically chesses him and says, "Oh, Zelensky, what a relief! Thank the Lord that you want to have negotiations. Let's continue where we left off at Istanbul." He even picked up a piece of paper. He's like, "Look, we still have the signature. There was a signature. Right. We have freaking signature." Right. So he
called his bluff. Yeah.
He called his bluff, and Zelensky did a counter thing. He's like, well, fuck. Like, I don't want to say no. That's going to be awful, right? So I'm going to be like, okay, you and me, mano a mano. In the back of this.
Stupid.
Right? Yeah.
Because, like, that's not how diplomacy works. Everybody knows that. Like, the history of the world and the history of world negotiations, everybody knows that the negotiators come in, they do their thing, and then once everything's been agreed to, that's when they trot out the puppets to sign things and do a photo op and stuff like that.
Yeah, only Zelensky actually talks about and negotiates on live TV in real time. That's just not normal.
Right. So, I mean, clearly this was a red herring, like I said, Putin was never going to show up. Why the hell would he? And now they're basically saying, well, because Putin didn't show up, he's not serious. At the end of the day, this is just nothing more than the Europeans, led by France, and the Ukrainians, led by Zelensky, wanting to keep the grift and the conflict going because they need the conflict to go. Zelensky's dead if
They're
the conflict
stalling.
stops.
It's ironic that they're stalling.
Well, and then guys like Macron and Sturmer, they realize that if that conflict stops, then all of a sudden people start to look at them. And they start to look at, well, what's going on internally in France? What's going on internally in UK? And it's really easy for guys like Sturmer to stay distracted with the Ukraine war so he doesn't have to face what's going on at home. And the reality is the UK's falling apart. The reality is France is falling apart. The reality is Germany's falling apart. All of these countries are collapsing.
Well, that's because the gamble went wrong. The gamble in Ukraine.
The gamble went wrong.
Tits up.
So they need this thing to keep going for a number of reasons. The problem now is Trump does not want to keep this going. It seems to me like Trump is ready to walk away within the next few weeks. I mean, that's basically what he said.
I think they want to outlast Trump.
They can outlast Trump, but then what? Right? Like, let's say that the U.S. just says, you know what, we're out of this game. We've tried to negotiate with you guys. You're really not playing ball. So we're just going to walk away. I think Trump is very close to doing that. And if that happens, then what? Like, what's France going to do? What's the UK going to do? What? This is all just trying to prolong the inevitable. The inevitable being eventually, sometime soon, Ukraine is going to capitulate to whatever terms the Russians are happy with. I mean, that's really what it comes down to. So this whole theater that Zelensky and the Macron conjured up, it hasn't played out well for them, as you said. They got outfoxed by Putin. They got outfoxed by Trump. And now they're all just looking really kind of pathetic, to be honest. Like, they don't look serious at all. And the world sees that.
Well, yeah, so basically, the longer that Ukraine, okay, time is not on Ukraine's side, is how I look at this thing. Right. I've heard other analysts make this exact same point, that time is not on Ukraine's side. And the longer that this goes, like the rate of Russian advances on the battlefield is accelerating. If we watch DPA, we can see, right? Even Wyatt is talking about it. Like, these are serious advances. So how did I go broke? Well, first little by little and then all at once. How did the dam break? First little bit by little bit and then all at once, right? So how does it crush? How does the freaking Ukrainian maybe AFU break, right? Maybe even if the AFU is broken, that doesn't necessarily mean that resistance ceases. And of course, I get all that, but maybe a little bit by little bit and then all at once, right? So it's not the time. Time is not on your side. What you need to do is you need to make a really good deal, the best deal that you can. You need to use all of your PR ability and PR talent. Zelensky, it's your time to really shine, right? After you screwed everything up, the one thing you can do is maybe use some of that media charm that maybe you still have somewhere and use it to get the best possible terms for Ukraine, right? But no, here's what we're reading in the Kiev Independent. Key developments, May 16. Ukraine-Russia talks in Istanbul, and Moscow demands Kiev withdraw from 4 regions. And no ceasefire agreement. We knew that there would be no ceasefire agreement, right? What is this? Like you say, red herring. Like, this is just distraction. Up to 640,000 Russian troops fighting against Ukraine. Wait, that they're saying that's okay, whatever. Ukraine lost contact with F-16 during combat. Pilot ejects. Oh, this is just a bunch of key developments. Okay, let's go.
We lost contact. We don't know.
Yeah.
No, it got shot down, guys. That's it.
Yeah.
just say that.
Ukraine and Russia delegation and just concluded their talks in Istanbul on May 16th, speaking for less than 2 hours with no agreement reached. on a full 30-day ceasefire. See, right away, this is what they're first talking about. Like, they came there for that 30-day ceasefire. I really wonder. I wonder if there's like they need that 30-day ceasefire because like there's somebody important in some pocket of something somewhere, and if the Russians just let up for like 30 days, they can get these guys out. Like maybe it's something like this. Like, remember how all the Azovstal thing happened, and then eventually they made a deal, and the Azovstal guys went to Turkey, and they were supposed to stay there, and then they didn't. So maybe something like that's going on. Maybe there's like some important Western general somewhere. Go ahead.
Well, you know what happened here is basically they met, they had their introductions, they started talking about terms. The Russians presented them with the terms that they said would be acceptable. And Ukraine said no, and Russia said, "Okay, we'll see you on the battlefield." And then they left.
No, I think more progress was made than something like the Kiev Independent will let on. Because the Kiev Independent has a huge dog in this fight, and like all opposition media in Ukraine has been completely closed, right? So Kiev Independent is going to be pro-Banderite, 100%. So notice right away they're like, no ceasefire. It was a failure. No ceasefire, right? Speaking for less than 2 hours, no agreement reached on a ceasefire. And then, right, this is hilarious. Look how they frame it. This is how you know this is like some really diehard Kool-Aid drinkers, like propaganda huffers. And Moscow demanding Kiev withdraw completely from Ukraine's 4 oblasts that President Vladimir Putin claims to have annexed. What do you mean claims to have annexed? They annexed them.
They annexed them. They put them in their constitution.
Vladimir Putin claims.
Not really a claim. I mean, you can say that he's made false claims to it, sure, but that's
yeah.
You know,
like, you can say that the annexation is illegitimate, right? That whatever he claims to have annexed. It's like Vladimir Putin claims that his name is Vladimir Putin. Okay, guys.
Well, maybe this is just English is not their first language kind of thing.
I think no. This is what Kool-Aid drinkers. This is how Kool-Aid drinkers write. I'm telling you, I've gotten to really get a flavor for hardcore Ukrainian Kool-Aid drinkers. Like they always write like this. So they're the guys that write Russia with 2 Z's, for example, or with a lowercase letter, or like it's like really petty, and you're like, what is this, right? And it's just like it's really like childish behavior where it's like. You're trying to put a you're trying to mock at every opportunity. It's like that kind of attitude, man, is not the way.
There's a lot of Ukrainians where I am, as you know. I've never met one of them with common sense. Like they're all foolish people. I always assumed that it was Chernobyl. Just kind of like made them all forget. But I've never met one who seemed to have any sort of sense, like just practical sense. Anyway, go on.
But like,
I just completely
they're just very passionate.
Shit on an entire nation of people.
No. Listen, I'm part Ukrainian, and so I'm telling you, Ukrainians are passionate folks. Go. A lot of people in my family are Ukrainians, right? They are passionate folks. There's this saying right there about Ukrainians in Russian where, to spite my grandma, I will put on a hat and still freeze my ears off. To spite the conductor, I will buy a ticket and still walk home. Like that will show them. Like you can really get that kind of attitude from Ukrainians sometimes, and it's really because they're just really passionate, fiery folks. I think like there's a little bit of that national character in them, and in the Soviet times they were kind of known as really more artistic flair and more passion, more inclined. Man.
Bunch of bohemian hippies from friggin' Prague. That's all it is. That whole region, just circle around it, and then just engage them in.
I think it's endearing. I don't know. But anyway, despite the demand, sources said, I love this. The Kremlin illegally declared the annexation of the 4 oblasts following sham referenda. a move that holds no weight internationally. You see what I mean? Like every single opportunity that they get, they try to kind of like poke and prod, and that right there is just like it's exhausting. It's exhausting to read that, but it's not exhausting for that person to write it because they are on fire. They are passionate.
Let's just move on from this. I think we've talked this to death, but I mean, at the end of the day, the war is just going to continue until
according
Russia
to the source
gets what they want.
Well, I think I disagree. I think that we might be potentially coming up on some kind of deal. I think the Kiev Independent is giving us a completely is misrepresenting the picture. So the Kiev Independent is making it seem like look, they keep putting this up. According to the source, during the talks, Ukraine offered an immediate ceasefire. Well, no shit, Sherlock. What a surprise. An immediate ceasefire. Oh, I couldn't see that one coming.
Oh, and sorry. I've completely moved on. I've focused on the girl with the rack here. Hey, she left.
Girl with the rack?
As soon as
I take a look, she was like, I'm not into him.
Oh.
But anyway,
it was just for me. We were having this kind of moment.
It was you had a moment. You were having a moment. So anyway, yeah, basically, oh my goodness, an immediate exchange of all prisoners. Of course you want to win in negotiations after you lost on the battlefield. One positive development: Russia and Ukraine reached an agreement for an exchange of prisoners, 1,000 for 1,000 basis. But okay, fine. Let's move on to the 4 scoops of crazy that we owe, but you guys get a little bit of the picture. I wish I could have delved into it more, but I guess I'm a little scatterbrained today.
All right, you share yours first, and then I'll
no, you got to share. You got to share yours because I can't. I don't have them written. They're all on my other computer. I don't have any of them downloaded yet.
So I read this in the newspaper, in the National Post, which is a national newspaper here in Canada. Why is this not sharing?
Oh, I'm trying to share it right now. Here it is.
So this was in the newspaper just this morning. You can still find it there. Vancouver streets are so full of human waste that they need poop ferries to clean it up. Now, this is Vancouver. Vancouver is got the highest. It's got the highest property prices in all of Canada. It's the richest city in all of Canada. And according to this article, the city of Vancouver has created what they call a feces removal program.
It's not a fun job.
Let me just read this article now. Vancouver. Now, keep in mind, this is Vancouver. Not too long ago, back in 2012, you'll recall that during the Olympics in Vancouver, everybody talked about what a wonderful city it was. The world was enchanted with the beauty of Vancouver, all this horse shit, right? That was 13 years ago. Nowadays, this is Vancouver. Vancouver, renowned for its natural beauty and laid-back lifestyle, has a human waste problem so bad that businesses have hired poop ferries to speed up cleanup in the city. Dodging human waste and dog waste has become a real problem for pedestrians navigating the city sidewalks. And it's not just a problem plaguing downtown East Side. The city's own feces removal response program can't seem to keep up. Everybody down here feels that you end up walking in stuff no matter where you go. So basically, it's getting tracked around, said Dave Ham. Get this, vice president of the Vancouver Network of Drug Users, which counts about 3,000 people in its membership. Okay, so a couple things going on here. Number one, I cannot believe we have what's called a Vancouver Network of Drug Users. Why, right? Secondly, if you read the article, it talks about how
at least you know where to find them.
At least it talks about the city's feces removal program, and it talks about how they collected 17,670 poops in 2024.
Wait, so can we get the Vancouver Drug Network to do the feces removal, or is that already happening?
Fuck, dude. Who knows, man? But like, this is where Canada is now. And that's why I wanted to show it
Peak
to you.
West.
This is our gem city.
Dude,
Okay?
I was
This is our
shocked.
gem city, and our city is paying people to pick up shit. Okay? This is where we're at now as a society. I don't know what else to say. How could I be proud? How do I be proud of this? How can I be proud of this country? How do I fight for this country? Why do I fight for this country? You know?
This is what happened to our peace dividend. Hey, if we actually had a peace dividend, think of all those trillions of dollars that we wasted, 10 times more than the next 10 countries combined, or whatever it was, right? Or more than the next 10 countries combined. You think it couldn't have at least solved the Vancouver poop problem? I think we could have solved the Vancouver poop problem. Holy fuck,
the
dude.
Wokeists, the globalist cabal, the WEFers, the Justin Trudeau's of the world created this. Justin Trudeau created this, and his ilk, right? We've gone from being a gem city that was internationally renowned 13 years ago to having a network of drug users and having to trip over shit. And not only that, we've institutionalized this. We've got city workers. Yeah, I'm a shit analyst. I go around picking up shit. Right? I don't know what else to say, guys. I do not know what else to say.
Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Are you smelling what I'm stepping in? And the answer is, in Vancouver is, I hope to God not. So yeah, the fact that they have a shit was it analyst who said
before.
Do they have a poop czar? Is there a poop czar? That they appoint officially?
I've said this before.
Go.
The robber barons have stolen everything that's not nailed down. The management class is corrupt and incompetent. Now they're looking to loot the treasury. That's the only thing left. That's where we're at. We're at end stage capitalism. And I can't think of a better example of that than this article. I'm so embarrassed to show you guys this article, but I thought it was important to show because I don't know what else to say about my country, that this is where we're at. Like, I really don't know what else to say. Please move on to yours. I'm getting depressed looking at this guy. Take him off.
No, you have to display it because I don't have it on this computer. You'll have to, I don't know, download it or show it or however you do that. I have no idea.
I don't even know what you gave me. I don't know what you're talking about.
So in the Telegram chat that I sent you 3 videos.
Oh, I didn't download them. I didn't even look at them. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, you could do. I would do number 1 of 3, or I would do number 3 of 3, or you could do them both. I think that they're both hilarious.
Okay.
The first one, it's like dude showing a fake ID, which was hilarious.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah, we are sorry, guys. We should have. Or do you have? I don't see any of it. We should have done this in advance, but it's at this point in time on character, on brand for us.
On brand. Yeah. I don't know what I'm looking at, brother.
Okay, so just look at the last video link that I sent you. The last Twitter link.
Okay, I'm just trying more.
It would have been a Twitter video.
Right.
A Twitter post. Yeah,
sorry, Brad. I don't know how to share it. I guess we're just going with one scoop, which is Vancouver's a fucking cesspool.
All right. Oh, dude, so we did prepare the other scoops, but we didn't show them. So now we owe 4 scoops next time. All right. This is my bad. I should have done this. I should have prepared. I should have prepared better. I did. I found them, and I did not download them. Okay, guys, we apologize for that. So this is going to be our episode 21 of Hell in a Handbasket. Kind of thrown together last minute. We apologize for being not as well prepared as we should have been. Okay, guys. So peace.
But guys, like seriously, if you're in the West and you see stuff like this going on in Vancouver, whatever, like we're going to get to the point where we're going to have to start fighting back. And Yeah, I think that's time is coming soon.
Well, yeah, if you look at everything that's happening right now, everything from the Kanye West Heil Hitler single all the way to uh, the complete collapse of institutional credibility. I think that's all dancing around the edges of that. Of we're booing you. This is the rotten tomatoes that we're throwing in your direction. You guys are fuck ups. You guys are dunces. You guys are the freaking George Bushes of the world. How a Yale graduate, George Bush, can barely freaking read the English language. What are we talking about? So yeah, this is all of it is pointing to that, I think. But okay, I guess that's episode 21, and I guess we will see you guys either on DPA Open Mic or here later. Peace.
Yeah. Cheers.